Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, and our dear friend or brother, Scott Ritter, is here with us. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start. Please hit the like button, helping us reaching more people. And Scott, let me start with what Pete Hegseth said briefing today. Here is what he said.
I stand before you today with one unmistakable message about Operation Epic Fury. America is winning, decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy.
Yeah. What is your understanding of who is he addressing? Is he talking to the press, to the Democratic Party? He's talking to the people in the United States. He's talking to the people in the region, in the West Asia. Who is the audience?
I don't know. I think everybody. This is a man who, Theodore Roosevelt once said, "Speak softly, but carry a big stick." Pete Hegseth is a man who is screaming loudly in order to impress on everybody that we have a big stick. But, if you have to be reminding everybody about how big, bad, and important we are, maybe we're not as big and bad and as important as we think we are. So I think there's a lot of bluster going up here to disguise the fact that we're in trouble in Iran. And, he's doing his best to distract people from digging too deep into the fact that Iran has the strategic initiative. It's the United States that's reevaluating its plans every 24 hours, not Iran. And it's Pete Hegseth that has to go in front of people and, play the role of cheerleader.
Yeah. Scott, just in 2 days, we have seen Iranian attacking the headquarters or somehow those offices of CIA in the region. And how do you see this strategy on the part of Iranians? Because they started with it's not just about that Iranian drone strike we had on US-based ammunition warehouse in Iraq as well. And how do you see the way that Iran they're not just going after Israel, they're mostly focused in the region, in the Persian Gulf Arab states and around Iran. What is the strategy on their part?
I think the strategy of Iran is to permanently evict the United States from the Middle East. They're attacking the military installations, they're attacking diplomatic facilities, they're attacking intelligence facilities, and they're attacking the nations that play host to these. So I think Iran is setting the conditions for eventual conflict termination, which will be Iran will stop these attacks when these nations kick the United States out of their soil.
Yeah. And today I talked with Laith Marouf, who is in Beirut. He said that Hezbollah is attacking Israel and they're feeling that there is no air defense system, and everything they send, they get into Israel without having any problem. What is your understanding, and how do you see the interceptors right now in Israel?
Well, what we're experiencing right now is a continuation of the 12-day war. And we know at the end of the 12-day war, neither Israel nor the United States nor the two of them, operating together had a solution to the Iranian ballistic missile threat. And that's been played out today as, the Iranians are launching attacks that are penetrating the defenses and inflicting serious harm on Israel. We now see Hezbollah, engaging in this conflict. I don't know the specifics of the weaponry that are being used by Hezbollah, how sophisticated they are. It's very difficult to make an assessment, except to point out that Hezbollah rockets are impacting on Israeli soil, which implies that the Israelis are not able to defend themselves effectively from the threat from Hezbollah. I can't wait to see what happens when Ansarallah enters the fray and starts firing its missiles and drones. I think we're looking at a conflict where assumptions had been made about the effectiveness of air defense that have been proven wrong. And this is going to require a continuous readjustment of war plans on the part of Israel and the United States and their Gulf Arab allies. Iran, on the other hand, just continues to do what it does, sort of a pre-planned action of broad spectrum pressure being placed on Israel, the United States, and the Gulf Arab region.
The two THAAD systems were, based on what Iranians are talking about, were destroyed, and the United States is bringing the defense system from, South Korea. And are these new, or do they need? Because it's not just the air defense system; you have to have the interceptors to go. How do you see that concept of bringing all they have in South Korea, other countries to the region to defend Israel, while everybody knows in the region that the United States' focus is to defend Israel, not these Arab states who are feeling the heat, who are getting hit by Iranian missiles?
Well, I mean, it's not just the Gulf Arab states that are, understanding that they play second fiddle to Israel. I think Ukraine is figuring that one out. And I also think that South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan are also figuring that out. The United States had promulgated a geopolitical posture through the National Security and Defense Doctrine that was published in November that spoke of achieving conventional military overmatch with China in the Pacific as sort of a foundational concept of how we're going to approach how we interact with the world. You can't have much overmatch when one of the known Chinese threats, and the threats from North Korea, are ballistic missile threats. And the most effective system the United States has to counter ballistic missiles in theater is the THAAD. And now the THAAD that was deployed in South Korea is being removed from South Korea. What's that tell the South Koreans, especially after the United States spent so much time crafting this new tripartite alliance between South Korea, Japan, and the United States that incorporates elements related to nuclear war, for instance, joint nuclear war planning, etc. So Japan and South Korea have taken that dangerous step forward toward nuclear confrontation with North Korea on the assumption that the United States was there to back them up. Well, guess you can't make that assumption anymore. We now know that the United States will sell anybody out for Israel. And as an American, I mean, I've always been, not always, but recently, so especially since October 7th, I've been very critical of Israel. And I've called Israel out as a threat. But, I've always left open the possibility that, it's just Netanyahu, that if you can change the government in Israel, maybe, you can change their trajectory. And I'm coming more and more to the conclusion that it's not just Netanyahu, that it's Israel in its totality, that the most dangerous threat to peace and security in the world today, collectively, is the state of Israel. Hopefully the Gulf Arab states come to this recognition that they have been sold a bill of goods by the United States, that this whole Abrams Accord was never about mutually beneficial economic relationship, but the absolute complete subordination of the Gulf Arab states to Israel. And the United States isn't there to secure the Gulf Arab states. The United States is there to secure Israel from the Gulf Arab states. And now that Iran has basically exposed this lie, it's imperative that the Gulf Arab states take action accordingly. And I think this is part of the Iranian strategy. By destroying the American military infrastructure, in order for America to come back, they'll have to rebuild this infrastructure. And this will require significant investment from the Gulf Arab host states. And hopefully the Gulf Arab host states say, no, we have no interest in rebuilding. Stay, leave, don't come back. And now that the CIA is pulling its assets out of the region, they too should not be allowed back in. And this is just a statement of fact that the Middle East has been infected by a cancer that is the American-Israeli posture, and that cancer has to be excised. And I think that's what Iran is in the process of doing. And even though I love my country and all this, you have to call a spade. And right now, the United States is facilitating the genocide that Israel committed against the Palestinians, facilitated the slaughter of Lebanese civilians through the bombing of Beirut, and now is facilitating a genocide type attack on Iran by by Israel. Take a look at what Israel is doing to Tehran. They're in the process of turning Tehran into Gaza, and they're proud of it. They're bragging about it. So we now have seen evil. We know what evil looks like, and it's time for the world to collectively work to eradicate this evil. And to weaken Israel, you have to get the United States to eliminate its aggressive posture geopolitically and militarily in the Middle East.
It's not just about, Democrats. We have Republicans coming out talking and trying to make the case against Donald Trump and what he's doing. Here is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said on Megyn Kelly's show.
Trump has said repeatedly on camera and in interviews, he doesn't think he's going to heaven. Well, I want to ask a question, a serious question. What is in his mind? What is his mental state? If he doesn't think he's going to heaven and he is a man towards the end, he's in the fourth quarter, he's towards the end of his life. How does that pan out for the rest of us when we have a president of the United States who doesn't think and is convinced he's not going to heaven? What does that mean his decision making is? He already said to the New York Post today that he doesn't care about the polling. He doesn't care about what the American people think, and he may put troops on the ground. He took this is going to be a few-day war, to now it's going to be maybe 4 weeks or more. I want to say, what is happening to the man that I supported, you supported, the man that denounced what happened in Iraq, the man that said no more foreign wars, no more regime change, promised it on the campaign. J.D. Vance promised it. Tulsi Gabbard promised it. All of them promised it. And we're a year in, and we're in another fucking war, and we've got American troops being killed. I think it's time for America to rip the Band-Aid off, and we need to have a serious conversation about what the fuck is happening to this country and who in the hell are these decisions being made for, and who is making these decisions.
I think many people are talking this way, and they're angry with Donald Trump. And I know that you were in the same campaign. You were thinking that Donald Trump could bring some sort of change to the foreign policy of the United States. And what is your answer to the question that Marjorie Taylor Greene was asking?
Well, we know what's going on. Donald Trump has completely sold American interests to the state of Israel, 100%. It's Benjamin Netanyahu that's calling the shots. What leverage he may or may not have over Donald Trump is irrelevant at this point. We just have to deal with the ramifications of this. But this shouldn't take anybody by surprise. Even during the campaign, we saw the degree to which Donald Trump slavishly subordinated himself to the pro-Israeli camp. Taking all that money from Miriam Adelson should have been a red flag to everybody. Then appointing just flagrant Zionists throughout his cabinet and positions of power. People, we saw when Tulsi Gabbard attempted to install as her deputy somebody who questioned, the aspects of Israel's dominance, that they were removed. They weren't allowed to achieve. You're not allowed to question Israel. You're not allowed to hint that there's a problem with Israel. You have to be completely subordinated to Israel. And that's the problem. Again, I just say this as an American. The number one threat to American national security is the state of Israel. Straight up. And we need to eliminate it. Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to start calling a spade a spade. It's not anti-Semitic to call out threats. We're not condemning the Jewish faith. We're condemning this perverse Zionist entity that has assumed a biblical, title in order to corrupt America, corrupt democracy, and corrupt the region and corrupt the world. Israel brings nothing positive to the stage. Israel's a parasite on the global community. It exists to suck the lifeblood out of the world solely for its benefit. And until we call it that, and if we continue to pretend that Israel has legitimacy in the world today, we just allow this activity to continue. Because the moment you legitimize the state of Israel, you legitimize their government, you legitimize these programs. If Israel is legitimate, the government's legitimate, then therefore, there's a limit to the umbrage and anger and angst that we can have about the recruitment of Jonathan Pollard. an American naval analyst who sold out his country in the worst possible way. He gave away, the volumes on, American SIGINT collection. It cost us billions of dollars to gather that information. Much of that information was related to very sensitive things, to include America's nuclear war plans. And how we collect that information. Some of that was done through covert means that could put not just capabilities at risk, but people at risk. Putting brave people's lives on the line who were doing things for their nation. Jonathan Pollard sold that out to Israel. Then Israel went ahead and sold that out to get Jews out of the former Soviet Union. So the idea that he was doing this for Israel is just absurd. He was doing this as is part of a global, Zionistic endeavor that is detrimental to not just American security, but global peace and security. You got to call it out. If you don't call it out today, then shame on you, because we know what's happening. We're just not allowed to say it. But it's time that we call it out straight up, and that includes calling out the Gulf Arab states. I mean, when are the population of the Gulf Arab states going to realize that their monarchies have sold them out to the state of Israel, have become completely subordinated to the will of Israel? I mean, my God, the Palestinian people have a genocide committed against them, and the Gulf Arab states are silent. Now we know why, because they're actively complicit with the Israeli government in the conduct of this genocide. And now they're transferring that genocidal behavior onto other Arab populations in Lebanon, and now the population of Iran. We just got to call it out. And if they can't call it out, then they need to be removed. And so, yes, I'm actively encouraging the populations of the Gulf Arab monarchies to rise up and remove their corrupt regimes from power, because they're not serving you. They've abandoned you, just like the United States has abandoned them. Maybe the light's gone off, and they realize, as they sit there and beg for more interceptors, that we're not giving them, because we're giving those interceptors to either our forces protecting Israel or to Israel directly. That all the promises we made over the course of the past several decades, that we are the security shield, dating back to the Carter Doctrine of 1979. We are the shield that will protect you. We're not going to protect you. We're abandoning you. And when it's all said and done, we're going to want you to keep your doors open so we can come back and reassert ourselves. That can't be allowed to happen. But, hopefully the people rise up. We see in Bahrain hints of regime change as the majority Shia population not only begins to confront the corrupt Khalifa family, but also violently confront the Saudi-led Gulf, the GCC security forces that are coming in to keep Khalifa in power. Topple Khalifa, Bahrain becomes a revolutionary state, and then watch what happens in eastern Saudi Arabia, where the majority Shia population is. And then as Saudi shifts forces to deal with that, watch what Ansarallah does, because Ansarallah has been kicking Saudi butt for a number of years now. And they've been kicking UAE butt for a number of years now. And if you take the shackles off and you let the Ansarallah go wild, they will destroy the energy infrastructure of both nations, and they will physically reoccupy territory that currently is considered to be Saudi territory, but historically is Yemeni territory. And they'll reconquer that. And hopefully we could see Ansarallah marching through the streets of Riyadh to take the al-Assad family down and drag them behind them, the same way the Hashemite family was dragged through the streets of Baghdad when the Baathists rose up and removed them from power. We need this kind of cleansing in the Middle East. These corrupt monarchies have been ruling for too long. They're simply a residue of former British colonialism. And then the United States took over, guiding their neo-colonial continuation. And they've sold their people out. These people don't stand for anything. They're not very religious, because, the moment they leave their countries, they get on an airplane. When they leave the airspace, the alcohol comes out, the women dress in Western standards. They go to Paris, they go to London, and they behave ostentatiously, which is fine if you're somebody in the West who has incorporated that lifestyle. But if you're pretending that you're somehow a pious, God-fearing person, and you make that the cornerstone of your image projection in your homeland, only to find out that when you fly away, you behave differently, you're just a hypocrite. And this is the reality of the Gulf Arab states. It's 100% hypocrisy 100% of the time, and that hypocrisy has come back to haunt them.
How powerful are they militarily if they decide to go to join the United States? Because many people in the Persian Gulf, they're talking about, we are getting angry, we're gonna do.
I hope they get really angry. I hope they stamp their feet and turn purple in the face. Saudi Arabia has been trying to defeat Ansarallah since 2014, and they haven't done it. Ansarallah. The United Arab Emirates joined in with Saudi Arabia to try and defeat Ansarallah since 2015, perhaps. Haven't done it. Can't do it. United Arab Emirates, their military is 85% mercenaries. So, I mean, what, you're going to tell me a UAE is going to stamp?
Are they from Pakistan? Or
Pakistan primarily. They come from Pakistan, India, other Bangladesh. But the point is, they're not Emirati, citizens. Emirati citizens are fat, pale, soft hands, soft skin, effeminate, because they don't know how to fight, because they don't want to fight. They let other people do their fighting for them. I mean, you'll find a couple spoiled princes because they have the lifestyle. They go to the gym and they run and they have chiseled features. But put them in a ring against the kid from the Bronx, and we'll stomp him into the dirt, because the kid from the Bronx can take a punch, been taking a punch his entire life. But these soft Emiratis, they can't take a punch, because anytime anybody threatens them, they snap their fingers and their Pakistani bodyguards come over and beat the people into a pulp. This is the reality of the totality of these Gulf Arabs. There's not a single one of them that measures in any degree of manhood. They hide behind money, money, money. They buy their way out of everything. I said this to Major General Matt Caulfield in August, I think, of 1990. I was called in. I was being pulled out of the amphibious warfare school to be sent to a special planning cell that the Commandant of the Marine Corps is putting together to plan amphibious warfare options. And Matt Caulfield wanted to, because I was a captain going into the company of colonels, and I was recommended by some people, and he was like, I got to find out why they're recommending a captain. What the hell does a captain know? And he started questioning me. And at the end, I said, sir, he said, what do you believe in? I said, we're fighting the wrong Arabs. I said, the Iraqis are hard working. I mean, when you want to dig a ditch in Iraq, the Iraqis dig the ditch. When you want to get something done, the Iraqis are doing it. You go to Kuwait and they farm it out because they're just fat, obese, rich, perverted people. We're fighting the wrong Arabs. We should be fighting the Kuwaitis. We're fighting the Saudis. And he was like, why do I want you on this project? I said, well, you asked me a question. I gave you the answer. But if you order me to plan a military operation, I'll plan that military operation. That's my job. That's my duty. But my duty isn't to blow smoke up your ass. My duty is to answer the question that you give me honestly and accurately. Take that answer. And so I plotted a war against Iraq, knowing the whole time we're fighting the wrong Arabs, because the Iraqis are far more men than any Gulf Arab state will ever be. The Gulf Arab states can't fight, don't know how to fight, won't fight. They farm it out. I was in a hotel in Riyadh before the war started. We would take our meals there. We worked down in the bunker of the Ministry of Defense building. So we'd go across the street, and they had this, I think it was a Sheraton hotel, had a nice, buffet spread. And so we would go there, and the Saudis paid for it all because they got a lot of money. And so we're sitting there, and I had just spent the day, prepared, going through target lists and all this stuff about a conflict we're getting ready to fight to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi occupation. And at the same buffet were a bunch of Kuwaiti princes who had fled Kuwait City, were now taking refuge in Saudi Arabia. And we overheard them. They were sitting there talking to their Saudi hosts, and they said, these Americans are our mercenaries. We're paying them to come here and liberate. And the lieutenant colonel I was with basically ordered me out of the room because he saw that I was going to get up, I was going to go over there, and I was going to beat the living shit out of this Kuwaiti, stomp him into the ground. I'm nobody's mercenary. I take the orders only from my legitimate chain of command. It was deeply insulting, but the problem is that's their mindset, and that's how they view everything. They don't view anybody as their equal. They don't view anybody as a partner. You are a paid servant. When they pull out their wallet and they start putting money on the table and you take that money, they believe they own you. And in fact, they do, except now what they're finding out is they've been played the whole time. that we've let them sit there and treat us to free lunches and free hotel rooms and free this, and they buy our goods. But at the end of the day, all they're good for is facilitating the desire of their Israeli masters to promote greater Israel. What do you think the Abrams Accords is? It's not about, collective empowerment through economic development. It's not about mutual beneficial relations. It's about the Arabs subordinating themselves to a greater Israel. 100%. That's all it's about. And that's what they've done. That's what these perverse, fat, pale, effeminate, non-men rulers of these nations have done. And I'm going to say, I'm just tired. We have to start calling it out. You can't solve a problem unless you actually define a problem. And so if we continue to pretend that Saudi Arabia is a military power when it's not, Ansarallah can defeat Saudi, and I pray they will. If Ansarallah is listening to this, march on Riyadh. Do it. Do it. Get rid of this ridiculous Al Saud family that only came in because of a bunch of Wahhabis ran around in camels and intimidated other Bedouin tribes in the 1920s and 30s. That's it. There's no legitimacy here. There's no mandate from God. They just happen to be a tribe, Al Saud, that had better camel operators than everybody else. It's the same thing with the rest. The Emirates, the British put them in. The British put everybody in. It's colonial legacy. There's no legitimacy. They have no mandate of the people. There's no democracy. And then they got lucky because they happen to be sitting on a bunch of oil and gas that has now made them richer than they can possibly imagine. But the money doesn't bring legitimacy. The money just makes them rich. Legitimacy has to come from standing for something. Standing for something. They don't stand for democracy. They don't stand for liberty. They don't stand for justice. They're just rich. That's it. And they believe that they could sit there and leverage their control of the United States into controlling Iran. But it turned out that it was the United States controlling them, using them on behalf of Israel. And that truth has now come out. That truth has been played out in broad daylight by Iran. This is one of the greatest gifts Iran's given to the region and the world by bringing everything to a head. Everything to a head. The world will now get to see what kind of country Iran is. They'll get to see the support that the Iranian people provide to their country. And they'll also get to see the fact that the United States has been using the Gulf Arab states on behalf of Israel for decades. And they'll get to see what Israel's real plans are, that Israel is nothing more than a genocidal state wrapped into a tiny piece of territory with meaningless biblical reference. I mean, throw away the Bible and what do you have? Nothing. So the Bible is, what these Zionists are abusing to pretend that they have legitimacy, that they are God's chosen, that somehow Israel, the Israel of today is part of a 3,000-year-old legacy. This is what, of course, the Christian Zionists believe, Mike Huckabee and Ted Cruz and others. And we're exposing the perversion of their thought, the illegitimacy of their thought. So this war, in many ways, is a clarifying moment. It's a tragic moment. And I wish it hadn't come to this. But now that it's here, we might as well just embrace all ramifications and call it out as we see it. It's not a time to hold back. It's not a time to continue to shield the truth. It's time to be brutally honest about everything. If you're out there and you want to be pro-Israel, say it. Acknowledge it. Be honest about it. Be honest. Because the people are tired of the lies. They're tired of the lies. It's time we have the truth. And if America truly wants to be a nation that has foregone its status as a constitutional republic, wants to operate as nothing more than a collective of sheep underneath a cult of personality serving the interests of greater Israel, fine. Fine. Just be honest about it. We have an election coming up. Tell the American people that's what they're voting for. When you vote for me, Donald Trump, or vote for my party, what you're voting for is greater Israel. We're not hiding it. It's there. We're voting for greater Israel, and we're not voting for the Constitution. You're voting to empower me, a cult of personality. I will continue to rename buildings in my name. I will continue to drop banners with my face. I will continue to make sure that everything centers around me, Donald Trump. If you can't see as an American what's happening, what other sitting president has operated with this degree of hubris and narcissistic arrogance? None. America is infected with a sickness, a disease that's destroying what we are. And what we're doing in the world today is just facilitating the downward slide of our nation. We we do need to resize ourselves. We have to understand that we aren't the sole remaining superpower, that the world is not conditioned to continue American hegemony. That doesn't mean America goes away, though. We just have to resize ourselves to the appropriate size, the size we should be of a nation of 340 million people with the natural resources that we have. But that means we have to learn how to live in, as equals with Russia, with China, with India, with others. But we can't live as equals. We're the most arrogant people on the planet, other than the Israelis. And we've subordinated ourselves to the Israelis. So there we go.
Scott, today Pete Hegseth was asked if he gonna put troops on the ground in Iran, and they didn't answer the question. They said they're not gonna answer it, and this is one of the main questions right now in the mind of our audience. They want to know what is your understanding of that. The other point is that many rumors they're talking about, they're bringing Syrian ISIS group and Kurds. They're gonna go underground. What is your understanding of these sort of rumors and some sort of ideologies that they think that they can put troops on the ground? It doesn't seem that the Trump administration is willing to do that.
Well, you remember I told you I was pulled out of amphibious warfare school to go on a planning staff for the Commandant of the Marine Corps to plan amphibious operations. This was in September of 1990. The United States was in the process of moving 700,000+ troops into the region to fight a war with Iraq, including hundreds of thousands of ground troops, ground combat troops, many divisions worth of troops. Back then, we were geared to do this, because we had, first of all, we had a whole bunch of forces in Europe that we were able to take an entire corps and transfer it to the Middle East. The Marine Corps had had equipment on ships, brigades worth of equipment, adding up to about a division's worth plus. And we could take these ships and offload them at ports and then fly Marines in. They'd marry up with this equipment and we'd be able to move on. This was the Cold War, where we were prepared to move hundreds of thousands of troops at a moment's notice. In fact, the entire reinforcement of Germany option was premised on the notion that we would have 300,000 troops in West Germany, and within 10 days, we could reinforce them with 250,000 troops. So we were geared, we were prepared to move 250,000 troops in 10 days. Today, if we want to send a heavy brigade to Europe today as part of the rotational reinforcement of forces, it takes 6 months advance notice to get that unit ready to move. So they have to do all sorts of stuff to get themselves ready to deploy. And then they have to actually load their stuff on trains, take it down to ships, load it on ships, sail the ships across the sea, offload it. And that's at a friendly port. They're offloading to the port of Hamburg. Now imagine if we want to take that same brigade and take it to Iran. Well, it's going to take 6 months to get them up. If they want to speed it up, good luck, because they're not ready. But now they get on their ships and they start moving. What port are they going to offload at? Because remember, we got to go to Iran. With Iraq, we were able to offload in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and then move our forces up and concentrate them, array them along the line of contact and carry out a ground war. How are we going to do this? Are we going to land in Saudi Arabia? Are the Saudis ready to have hundreds of thousands of Americans land, on the western provinces near Mecca, Medina, and then how are we going to move them across, position them in Kuwait? Because we can't take them to Kuwait anymore. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The ships will be sunk as they move in. As we start to offload, Iranian missiles will start pounding the port, blowing up the ships, killing the troops, destroying the logistics. So we can't do that. We can't fly them in because all the airfields are under attack. And then once we get them off the plane, where do we put them? In a giant camp that says, blow me up? No. So we have two options. We can land in Western Saudi Arabia or land in Jordan through Israel. And then build up a force in Jordan, and then move through Iraq. Logistically, this will be a nightmare, but we could do that. Move through to get to the Iraqi-Iranian border, where we then would have to cross in. Have you looked at a map of Iran? Have you seen the mountain ranges that separate Iran and Iraq from, say, Tehran, the seat of power, or from anywhere? So it's not a flat plain that we get to drive in through there like Germany and go straight. We'll be going through mountainous terrain where the Iranians have been preparing for decades to receive us and destroy us and annihilate us. So we have that option. It would take us 9 months to more than a year and a half to build up the forces capable of carrying out such an operation. Or we could get the Marine Corps and say, you need to do a seizure of a port. We used to train for that. 1985, I actually helped write the plan for the seizure of Chabahar and Bandar Abbas. I'm familiar intimately with what the intelligence was at that time, what we would need to do, how we move forces in. But we had a Marine Corps geared to do that back then. We're not geared to do that today. How do we get, it would take, we'd have to use at least 3 brigades in the initial assault. How do we get 3 brigades onto ships? I don't think we can anymore. But if we could, how do we get them close to the Iranian shore without getting sunk? This is a problem that General Berger saw when he became the commandant a couple of years ago. He said, we can't fulfill our mission because we're linked to legacy-style amphibious operations that put 1,000 Marines on a big ship. And in order to get those Marines off the ship, we have to bring it close to shore and they get sunk. So how do we do this? With all due respect to Pete Hegseth, he just simply doesn't know what he's talking about. It's just crazy talk, insane talk. So now we get to, plan B, where CIA paramilitaries, joint special operations, and special forces start to work with, indigenous forces to create, indigenous proxies, militias, resistance groups, etc. We know some exist. We have the Baluchi Liberation Army working out of Pakistan. CIA has a long history of working with them. We have the Kurds. We've been working with the Kurds forever. We got Azeris that could come in. Lor, I think you're familiar with the Lor people, sort of in the Kurdish area, but separate from the Kurds. We got the Avaz Arabs. We got MEK. It's always out there. Although I don't think the Iranian people will rise up and rally around MEK, but they're very good at being used to disable, blow up, and destroy things. And we got the monarchists that can always raise a flag, shout death to Khamenei, and then run away. So now right now the decision apparently has been made to arm the Kurds. I don't know. Are you familiar with Kurdish history? It's never a good idea to arm the Kurds because 2 things always happen. The Kurds lose, and then they get betrayed and abandoned. But the other thing is, yes, we can go into northern Iraq and we can mobilize Kurds there. What is Turkey going to do? Sit there and go, that's a good idea. Why don't you get the Kurds riled up, believing there's going to be a free and independent Kurdistan, because that never blows back to Turkey. It's not like we have a significant chunk of territory that the Kurds want as well. This is why Turkey has intervened so harshly in both northern Iraq and in Syria to stomp down any notion of a free and independent Kurdistan. So Turkey's not going to let the United States come in and arm 10, 20,000 Kurds and say, march and take over. That's just not going to happen. Meanwhile, I think the Iranians are already on top of this, and they're already launching preemptive strikes into Suleimania and other areas, breaking up these Kurdish groups as they build up. But once again, the Kurds are just going to be given the short end of the stick. I wouldn't want to be a Kurd because they're just going to get used, abused, and slaughtered again. Basically, we have no options. None. Now, had the CIA and Hegseth and everybody sat down with real experts and held a panel discussion, they would have known this up front. And they sat down with real experts about Iran. It's funny. Some of the big advisors out there are guys who served in Task Force 17. Ooh, JSOC, baby. Delta Force. These guys are good. They got big muscles and they got tattoos. They're really good at jumping out of helicopters and sprinting into buildings and killing people. So be it. Hooray, Delta. But they were supposed to carry out this covert war against the Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, in Iraq and all this stuff. And so you have these thick-necked knuckle draggers, some of whom are, smart enough to have learned Farsi. And they were involved in a campaign that they lost ultimately. But now they're the ones posturing themselves as regional experts and providing the advice. And these are the people saying that the Iranian people want to be overthrown, that they hate the regime, so we got Delta Force knuckle dragging losers, guys who haven't won a war yet, big L stapled on their heads. They probably got their ass kicked in Afghanistan. They came over and got their ass kicked in southern Iraq. And then they went home and started thinking about their relevance in the world. So they started selling themselves as regional, a subject matter expert is a term they like to use. And they just are ignorant. If they've been in Iran, it's because they landed there one night to insert somebody or extract somebody or to plant a device or to do something. But they haven't wandered the streets of Tehran interacting with the Iranian people, talking to them. They haven't, gone to Kashan. They haven't gone to any of the places that were blowing up. They didn't go to Manab. They certainly didn't meet with the families of the school children that were slaughtered by the bombs. These people know nothing about Iran. Nothing about Iran. And yet they're the ones saying, no, all we have to do is kill Ali Khamenei and the system comes down. But had they talked to real experts, they would have known that killing Ali Khamenei will only strengthen the system, that it will backfire. And that's exactly what happened. We did succeed in getting, President Trump, congratulations. Good job, man. Because you did what you wanted to do. You wanted the Iranian people to rise up and take matters into their own hands. And they have. They've risen up. And they said, we are behind the government. We are supporting the martyr, Ali Khamenei. We are supporting the new supreme leader, Ali Khamenei's son, Mujab, I think his name is. I could be mispronouncing that, but that's what I do for a living. So apologies. But the point is, we are so far removed from reality. We don't respect anything. We treat the Iranians as if they're a bunch of camel jockey, ragheads, sand niggers, whatever other derogatory term we can use and have used in the past to describe the people of the Middle East, instead of one of the most cultured, refined, dignified people the world has ever seen, with a history that goes back thousands of years. And the Iranian people, even if you're an Islamist supporting the Islamic Republic, you embrace that history, you respect your culture. And you want these people to sell out this legacy that they have. It's just not going to happen. But we're ignorant of this. And now, not only are we blowing up, we're blowing up history. I've heard stories. I just hope it's not true, but I've heard stories about blowing up, in Tehran, we're blowing up some of the old Qajar. And again, I might be mispronouncing that. That might be called, pronounced differently, but what I'm talking about.
It's good. It's good. Your pronunciation is good.
I'm safe. There was a time when I was trying to pronounce Bab el-Mandeb, and I was just fumbling it left and right 20 times. And somebody did this really cool meme because it showed me, the Bab and they're like, oh, the Bab and finally I go, the Bab el-Mandeb, and there's a whole group of yay. So I try, I really do. But the, Qajar dynasty, the art, the history, the culture there. When I went to Iran, I was guided by a Revolutionary Guard escort. But he took me to these places, and he was in awe of the beauty. They revere their history, and I think we've blown it up. And I think we're blowing up places in Isfahan, we're blowing up places in Shiraz, we're blowing up places in Kashan. What we're doing to Iran is cultural genocide, but we don't care because we have no comprehension of who the Iranians are and appreciation of what they are. We don't know what their history is. And all we're doing is aligning ourselves with the nation Israel, which is fully capable of committing genocide against a nation of 90 million, as they were with committing genocide against a population of 3 million in Gaza.
Yeah. Scott, when Pete Hexet's giving us a timeline, of the war, and he's talking about 4 days, then 4 weeks, and right now, I don't know how long does it take. It reminds me, I don't know if you saw the video comparing Rumsfeld to Pete Hexet today. The same, it seems that they're talking about the same sort of, idea when it comes to war. It doesn't seem that Pete Hexet, because he was part of he said that he was in the Middle East. He know what was the war, but he doesn't remember what was the mindset that brought him to the Middle East, to that war, which was simply the Bush, presidency, that the people around President Bush, that they thought that they could, wrap it up in a short period of time, which didn't happen. Here is comparing the two, Rumsfeld to Pete Hexet.
I can't tell you if the use of force in Iraq today would last 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months, but it certainly isn't going to last any longer than that.
President Trump has all the latitude in the world to talk about how long it may or may not take. 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It could move up, it could move back.
Yeah. how someone who was in this war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, I don't know where he was, but he doesn't understand the reality of what's going on, and he doesn't see the threat of a long war. I think that is really happening. It's going to be a long war. It's not going to be a short, but it doesn't seem that is totally perceived by the Trump administration.
I'm just quick going through Hegseth's resume. It's not very impressive. He enlisted. He was commissioned in the military. He did tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. When I look at it, he has the combat infantryman's badge, but when I look at his Bronze Star, it's a slick star, which means that it wasn't awarded for heroism. So this is a man who, at the time they were just handing out awards left and right for anybody deployed. This is a man who's not seen hard combat. He doesn't know what hard combat is. And this is a man who never rose to any, significant position of authority. He hasn't commanded troops in combat at the battalion level or any level above that. So we need to be careful when Pete Hegseth starts talking about, I've been there, I've done that. We also need to judge Pete Hegseth on his own words. If you recall, when he addressed 800 American generals and admirals in Quantico in October of 2025, I think, last year, he defined what he considered to be the epitome of the military standard, and basically said it's 1993, an 03 captain, or an E6 staff sergeant. Well, guess what, Pete? Guess who was a captain in 1993? Me. I'm the epitome. I'm that which you have never been, and you will never be. I'm the guy that actually trained during the height of the Cold War, when the American military truly was the finest military in the world. I am somebody who has been schooled in the proper ethos of military service, one that is founded in the Constitution and premised on absolute professionalism in everything we do. This is pre-politicization, pre-woke, pre-DEI, pre-anything. This is when men were really men. And the staff sergeants I dealt with were the same way. I am everything you will never be, Pete. I'm a professional. You're a frickin' amateur, purely an amateur. And what you are is a bitter amateur. You're somebody who wishes you were something you'll never be, and therefore you're posturing to be that instead of being the Secretary of Defense. So Pete Hegseth is just a walking, talking joke of a human being. He's not qualified for the position he's in. And again, it's just time for us to be honest. We just have to start calling these things out. We can't pretend that Pete Hegseth is qualified to be doing what he's doing. Because as long as we pretend that, then it's okay for him to sit there and show this kind of vacillation. My God, do you have a war plan or not, Pete? Simple question, yes or no? A war plan or not? Because you seem to be making it up every single day of the week. You wake up tomorrow and things have changed, and now you're giving a press conference where you're changing the parameters. If you were going to put troops on the ground, you should have thought about that 9 months ago, and they should be moving in place as we speak, instead of now speaking about the possibility. And what president doesn't know what they're doing? Cheney was speaking in 2002, but you forget that Cheney was the Secretary of Defense during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. He knows what it means to move troops. We also forget that before Dick Cheney became overly politicized as Secretary of Defense, he put the brakes on and advanced to Baghdad at the end of the Gulf War. After we had crushed the Iraqi army on the field of battle, there were people who were saying we should go ahead and finish it off, go up to Baghdad. And Cheney said no. He said, because if we break it, we own it. If we occupy it, we gotta take responsibility for it. We're not ready to do that. We don't have a plan for that. Dick Cheney understood you have to have a plan that's been thought out, advised by experts. Now, he forgot everything before we went to war in Iraq, and you see the results. We went to war in Iraq on a plan that was half-assed. We didn't have a plan for success, and we didn't know what we were doing. We ended up occupying the country with a czar. What was the guy's name? Paul. I can't remember his name now. But the guy who ran the country, and he basically demobilized the Iraqi army and went into de-Baathification and basically eliminated the one thing that was holding Iraq together. And then Iraq devolves into chaos and anarchy, sectarian warfare, and all that stuff. We're stuck in the middle, and the rest is history. We broke it. We got driven out. I don't know what Hegseth thinks he's doing, because we went to war on a half-assed plan that was there to appease greater Israel. Israel is laughing all the way to the bank. They don't care about Americans. They don't care that we're bankrupting ourselves. They don't care about anything other than the fulfillment of their plan of greater Israel. And so they're laughing as we break our backs here. We are breaking our backs. And you can see it in the panic in Hegseth's mind. I mean, when you take joy out of sinking a ship that had gone to India to participate in a festival, a shipping festival, so it had been paraded on the shores, and now it's off the coast of Sri Lanka, not an active combatant, heading home or heading to wherever they're going to head, and we send a submarine. We're not in a state of war. What legal authority did we have to sink that ship? Did Congress authorize that? We had legal authority, apparently, according to Congress, to preempt the Iranian missile attack against us. But this ship is out there, and we sunk it. The most cowardly act possible. We didn't give it an opportunity. The submarine didn't rise up and say surrender or something like that, send a signal. That ship was sailing, not in combat mode, and we sunk it. And Pete Hegseth is bragging as if this is some sort of example of, American martial supremacy. It's something we're supposed to be proud of. No, Pete, we're ashamed of you, and we're ashamed of that action. It's something that the ship's commander should never have done. That submarine commander should never have sunk that ship. That ship posed no threat to anybody. And why did we sink it? Because we can. And don't tell me we're at war, because Congress refuses to declare war. Congress called this a defensive action. I mean, that's what Mike Johnson was saying. It's defensive. Therefore, it's not really a conflict. We don't even get involved. It's purely defensive. Was that a defensive action to send a submarine off the coast of Sri Lanka to sink a ship? Sounded pretty offensive to me. And this is what we're doing on everything. I mean, this is an incompetent campaign that was all premised around the notion of regime collapse. Now that that's failed, now they don't know what they're fighting for. They're just blowing up buildings. And that's all they're doing is blowing up buildings. If you think there's anything inside the buildings being bombed, you're dumber than dirt. Because anything of value has been long since evacuated and hidden in any one of hundreds of hide sites the Iranians have been preparing since 2005. Go back to the history of Firdos, the underground cavern that they put this enrichment capability in wasn't built for Firdos. It was built to hide stuff. It's one of a number of hide sites in the region that were constructed so you can empty empty factories of the high value production equipment, so that when nations like the United States come in and drop bombs on the buildings, all they do is blow up concrete blocks, in other structures. But the high value stuff has been moved. So it's all gone. It's all moved. We're just blowing up empty buildings. We're killing a lot of civilians in the process, but we're not achieving much of anything. The Iranians have been watching the way the United States fights, and I would encourage anybody who takes anything that Pete Hegseth or any American military person at face value today, don't. The Iranians are experts at being Iranians. And what I mean by that is they know their game plan. They've been watching the United States fight since the Gulf War. They understand how the United States and Israel goes about doing various operations. The Iranians are very expert in watching the Israelis operate, because the Iranians have been the number one sponsor of Hezbollah, and there's been Iranian advisors working hand in glove with Hezbollah. So they know everything about how Israel conducts ground operations, air operations, the whole thing. So preparing for this campaign, do you think for a second the Iranians might have said, how do we get the Americans and the Israelis to expend the bulk of their resources chasing ghosts? Or did they say, we're going to just go out there and do this and leave ourselves at the total mercy of the Americans and the Israelis are going to be flying in looking for any indicator and falling in on that, and we're going to sacrifice everything just so we can fire some missiles? They have us chasing ghosts. When I read the Israelis, they're like, we got them down to 12 launchers. I'm like, really? Wow, you guys are pretty damn good. 12 launchers. Wait, time out. Simple Marine here. Not very good at math, but didn't the Iranians launch more than 12 missiles at Israel the other day? If they only have 12 launchers, and at the same time, didn't they launch missiles against the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait? And how does that work, Israel? I mean, you guys are the smartest people on the planet. You are God's chosen, after all. So maybe you have magical God-driven math. But they just don't know what they're talking about. I remind people that when the Gulf War started, we gave Iraq accurately a credit for 19 mobile launchers. By week a week and a half into the war, we destroyed 64. Now you might ask yourself, how does that happen? How do you turn 19 into 64? And at the same time, the Iraqis were launching high volumes of missiles at Israel and Saudi Arabia. So it meant we were killing things that weren't launchers. And that was the problem. We were out there blowing everything up because we were so driven on accomplishing something. There was so much political pressure. And I tell you right now, we're blowing up things. We may be getting a launcher here and there. I mean, we are putting considerable resources into this effort. But if you think for a second, the Iranians haven't thought this thing through, that there aren't decoys. You know, ask yourself how you could possibly be triggered into sending your combat air patrol over something. There's visual cues. So the Iranians will have fixed cues. They'll go out and set up a launcher and raise it. Now, if I were a military analyst and I took a look at the imagery stamp and it said that this picture was taken 45 minutes ago, I'd say don't bother striking, because the Iranians will be done 5 to 7 minutes after launch. They're moved. So unless we can get an asset on target within 5 to 7 minutes of detection, don't even bother. But no, we send them in there, we blow it up, we show the image, we say, got one. No, you didn't. You got something the Iranians wanted you to get. And they put it into place so that those resources you had were physically here. Now, plot out the timing of the other launches and the locations. You're going to see that the Iranians are creating impetus over here to divert resources to create a window of vulnerability here, because now we don't have resources to strike and the missiles get launched. Is there a mistake made? What happens is they pull a missile launcher out and they raise the launcher and there's a leak and the missile gets stuck in the up position. Well, that missile's screwed. It's going to be left there. The guys are going to be working to try and get it down, and we're going to come in and we're going to blow it up. We're going to show that film and say, we got one. Yes, we got one there. Congratulations. But we didn't get it because we're smarter than the Iranians. We got it because a mistake took place. That's just the way it is. There's also, I guess the word SIGINT cues, communications cues. So the Iranians are going to sit there and they're going to flood the airwaves with communications because they're experts at this, and they're going to give away signals. They're going to be saying things like, send convoy X. They'll be using code words. Send convoy X over here. Generate movement traffic, and they'll have people out there moving, and we'll go out there, track it, and they're luring us away from the place that they're launching. And eventually we'll catch on to this and we'll start not responding. But the Iranians have a plan. They have a plan they've been thinking out for some time now, 20 years to be precise. And we don't have a plan. Our plan was to begin bombing, kill Khamenei, and within 4 days have people in the streets demanding, President Trump, we've done what we can. It's up to you. Well, the people spoke. They're supporting the martyr Ali Khamenei. They're supporting the new supreme leader. They're supporting the government of Iran. So now we don't have a plan. And now the ramifications of not having a plan are playing out as we run out of missiles, we run out of bombs, we run out of targets. And this is the real danger, because as we run out of targets, we're going to start to look for new targets. And we have no idea what we're looking at. So we're going to start blowing things up. This is where we're going to blow up hospitals. This is where we're going to blow up schools. This is where we're going to blow up bomb shelters. And this is just the reality of war. It's going to get horrible. And the Israelis don't care. The Israelis will say, rather than even, with America, it's just making a mistake. With the Israelis, they're going to basically apply the Dahiwa doctrine, the southern suburb of Beirut. Level it. Send a signal. Level it. And right now, they are going neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood in Tehran and leveling it, dropping it. And they're going to drop all of Tehran. By the time this is done, Tehran is going to look like Gaza. But what did you expect? You're going to war against a genocidal nation. I mean, Israel is a sick genocidal nation, and they only understand how to commit genocide. And so that's what they're doing right now with the nation of Iran.
Scott, one of the radars that yesterday was hit was this, early, they're calling it was $1.1 billion in Qatar. It's a ballistic missile early warning radar. It was in Qatar. Are they using that radar to, it's in combination with the defense systems in Israel? And how is that going to influence the whole concept because they have to send the signals to the air defense system. Is that the case, and how big is that for the whole concept of defending Israel?
My understanding is that this radar position where it was to provide early warning, early detection of Iranian ballistic missile launches. So you get the cues, boom, and now because you can't keep a system operating 24/7, so you have to have things stood down. So when you get indicator of launch, now you send the signal. You're getting, you're going to get the speed, you're going to get the azimuth. You're able to predict direction, and even in some cases predict point of impact with this data alone. And then you send that data in, and now we start to queue other detection capabilities to get radars up, looking, scanning, overlapping, getting defenses unlocked, up, looking, so that we can create a layered approach to defend against that attack. If you eliminate that, you don't have that early warning. So now the Iranians get a leg up because they're going to fire, and it's going to have to wait to get picked up by satellite systems. You may not get the same predictive outcome. And so now you're going to have to scan even more. And now by scanning even more, you understand that you're, first of all, you're wasting resources, but you're also giving away information because, again, I don't know how the Iranians do business. If I were doing business, I'd be flying drones equipped to collect signals intelligence. And as I launch my missiles, my drones are out there scanning. And we're looking for radar activation. We're going to assess the signals, look at signal strength, look at the time it's operating, look at the direction that radars are. Then we're going to be monitoring, how the missile interceptors work. At what point in time do you engage THAAD? At what point in time do you engage David Sling, Arrow? And all that data goes in. And let's say they get it. Let's say this missile's launched, and boom, now the Iranians are going to go, okay, what was the vulnerability there? How did this happen? How do we prevent this from happening next time? What do we need to do to prevent these systems from operating at optimum capability? And they'll make that adjustment, flood the system, provide distraction. The next missile comes in and hits the target on the ground. This is what missile war is. And the Iranians are masters of it. And by blinding the coalition, by destroying this radar, it significantly enhances the ability of Iran to ensure that their missiles hit the targets that they intend to hit.
Yeah. Scott, before wrapping up, many people are curious about India in the whole calculation. Was that a big deal for, to see Modi going to Israel, showing, how close he is to Netanyahu and Israel, or he's a political figure. He's doing whatever he feels is better for India for the time being. How do you see the whole concept? Because India is part of BRICS, and we know that how important India is. And when you see Modi doing this, and is that significant for the whole concept of the region and BRICS?
It's very significant. Understand that when was it? September of 2023. There was the G20 meeting, I think, in India, New Delhi. And Joe Biden was president at the time, and he came out and he stood side by side to Modi, and he announced the India, Middle East, European economic corridor. Basically, India was the idea was that goods made in India get put on a container ship that gets sent to the United Arab Emirates, offloaded, loaded on a train, that transits the United Arab Emirates, transits Saudi Arabia, transits Jordan, and goes into Israel to the port of Haifa, gets loaded on a container ship, taken across the Mediterranean, offloads in Greece at a port there, and then is brought into Europe. So here you have this corridor. Now, the key aspect here is that these states are working with Israel. Israel's part of the overall equation. And India was a leading advocate for this. The irony was, and nobody really picked up on it at the time, that the Haifa port and the port in Greece were built with Chinese Belts and Roads money, and most of the rail lines that were considered to be used are rail lines built with Chinese money. So the India, Middle East, and European Economic Corridor was supposed to be a competitor with China's Belt and Roads, but it was really just fallen in on it. I mean, that's again showing the stupidity of people. But India has always been a promoter of Greater Israel, and so it doesn't surprise me that Modi went to India. And the timing is also, I think Modi understood what was about to happen, and he was there to put India's marker on the table. India, when the Strait of Hormuz is shut, India is going to pay a very heavy price. They get a significant amount of their energy through the Strait of Hormuz. And so I think this was a political statement by Modi about which side he's on, and he's advocating for, keeping the strait open and things of that nature. We'll see. But no, this was India is not a very reliable member of BRICS. India has some bilateral relations with Russia. India has a strained relationship with China. But India, more than anything, has shown itself to be an absolute tool of the United States, and by extension, a tool of Greater Israel.
Yeah.